Hey everybody, welcome to Fight Network's Downtown Studios. I am John Randamie alongside Cody Saftik. UFC 208 going down at the Barclays Center in Brooklyn, New York. I think February 11th is the date. The UFC crowning their first ever female 145-pound champion when Holm, the former 135-pound champion, moves up to take on Dutch fighter Germaine de Randamie. I don't know how many people are super excited about this card. That's why I think the UFC needed to add Anderson Silva and Derek Brunson. When we look at the main event, Holm de Randamie, is it just going to be de Randamie doing her Dutch kickboxing style and Holly Holm circling around American kickboxing mixed up with her hands?
I think that's exactly it. If you're going to give the fans a fight that they might not be aware of who both fighters are, let alone, well, I'm sure they know who Holly Holm is, but if you're going to give them that type of fight, then it's got to be exciting. You're not giving them grappler versus wrestler. So if we think that it's going to go 5 rounds, it should be 5 rounds of kickboxing. We know the pedigree of the Dutch fighter, as you mentioned. We know her accolades, the Iron Lady. She's been around for a very long time. And conversely, in MMA striking, she's transitioned pretty well, except for in that gap when people are able to pin her up against the cage or get her down. But she's still fighting at a very high level. Holly Holm, the former boxing champion, is also coming from a kickboxing pedigree and has shown that her style in MMA transitions over pretty well as well. So I think that it's going to be a good fight between the two of them. I'm excited for it. It should be a stand-up battle throughout, but it's just important to note that you're putting a title on the line between one girl who's coming off a pair of losses versus another girl whose wins in the UFC include Julie Kedzie and Anna Elmos, both fighters that are now retired. So it's hard to get the fans excited. A good style matchup and a good fight would then add some interest and get the fans excited.
And that's what it comes down to. These ladies have an opportunity to go out and really put on a show.
Let them
and really
know.
Exactly get some of the spotlight. When you have a guy like Anderson Silva, I don't know, what is Anderson Silva's drawing power in 2017? Are people still excited to see Anderson Silva? What type of Anderson Silva do you expect to see in Brooklyn?
Yeah, people are always excited to see Anderson Silva because at the end of the day, he's one of the sport's great stars. Now, if he's on a pay-per-view, then he just adds that little bit of boost on a pay-per-view. But if you put him on a fight night card like the one upcoming, then he's all of a sudden the biggest name, the biggest draw on a fight night card like Bermudez versus Korean Zombie. So there's always going to be that interest for him. And whereas we're talking about, well, are stars from the past fading away, don't necessarily think he falls in that boat.
When you look at Derek Brunson, though, he is not the new generation of fighter. He still has, elements of the old game with that athletic background. I wrestle and I kickbox. It just does not seem that he is as advanced as he needs to be when it comes to putting the entire game together. Now, Anderson Silva, we know what Anderson Silva is capable of when he is on his A game, which has been a long time, I think, since he's been on his A game. And again, you can look at that fight with Daniel Cormier where he had opportunities. He landed the body kick that hurt Daniel Cormier. We know what Anderson Silva is capable of. But what are we going to see from Anderson Silva in this fight with Derek Brunson?
Well, once again, when you talk about our aging stars and you think, well, what can we get out of BJ Penn? It's not there. What can we get out of Andrei Arlovski? And it's not there. In Anderson Silva's case, only a couple fights ago, he's having a thriller against Michael Bisping, which he's probably a hair away from stopping altogether.
But there's also a reality. When you think, and when you're objective about it, when you think of Michael Bisping at 185 pounds, and I know we watched him knock out Luke Rockhold. Can he do it again? And if he's facing Yoel Romero, and if he's fighting Jacare, and he's fighting Mousasi, and he's fighting Chris Weidman, are you taking Michael Bisping against any of those guys?
I might not be, but there's no discrediting him. He's earned his way up to the title.
I agree.
He's beaten a couple top guys to get himself to the title. He's one of the good fighters in the middleweight division and currently holding the title.
He's the best fighter in the middleweight division right now.
And that's exactly it. And you and I always talk about rankings and how fictitious rankings are. It doesn't matter who the 2, 3, 4, 5 guy, because they can all beat each other. There's only one number guy in the world, and it's the number 1 guy in the world, and it's the guy with the belt. Michael Bisping's got the belt. But Anderson Silva's competitive against the guy who's technically speaking the number 1 guy in the world. The Daniel Cormier fight, he moves up on a week's notice and moves up to 205 pounds and takes on the champion at 205.
A guy that's also fought at heavyweight.
A guy that's also fought at heavyweight, and by the way, was undefeated at heavyweight and looked pretty good. And he's competitive in sort of ways, certainly the third round, against a guy like Daniel Cormier. So I don't think that he's all the way broken down. And when you look at Derek Brunson might not be a prospect anymore. He's more of an established guy. I think he's very well-rounded, but he fights with a very big urgency. He wants to get in there and get it done as quick as possible. As a result, he's knocked out some tough guys. He knocked out Sam Alvey. He knocked out Ed Herman. But he goes in there and he rushes as fast as possible. If you look at the way he loses, go back to his Strikeforce days against Jacare. He runs in with his chin up, and they're able to take advantage. They're able to capitalize. Looking at his last fight, not everyone, but there was a certain marquee of people were we're thinking, you know what? The way this guy fights, the way he's aggressive, the way he fights with his chin
gonna get him
up,
knocked out.
he can get him knocked out. Now, if you're going to give me that, it's like, okay, you just need a fighter that can capitalize on that one opportunity, see that one thing, boom, give me Anderson Silva, right?
Yeah.
So even though he's a little slower than he used to be, he only needs the one shot, and it's a good probability that he can land that shot. Therefore, it keeps the fight interesting because it's going to be competitive.
Well, one of the things we've seen about Anderson Silva, and it's very strange considering who he is and the fact that he was a UFC champion for such a long time. He influenced the entire sport of mixed martial arts, but there seems to be a little bit of ego when it comes to Anderson Silva. Is he done at this stage of his life and his career of messing around, go out and do what you do best, you know, force your fighters, your opponents to be in the matrix, slow everything down, land a flying knee, or land a counter, the night is over?
You would think so, but we never get what we get. You never understand fully the Spider, Anderson Silva.
Yeah,
all of a sudden, he wants to talk to the media. He doesn't want to talk to the media. He says he's going to retire from the UFC. Oh, my son doesn't want me to fight anymore. I'm going to retire. Then he signs like an 8-fight deal or something and returns. Well, I just want some super fights. He even said, I don't want to fight Chris Weidman no more. I'm done. Don't want to challenge for the belt. All of a sudden, I want to challenge for the belt. I want a trilogy match with Chris Weidman. It's hard to take it for face value. We don't really know where his head's at. But what we do know is that he's exciting when he goes in there. And as fans of the sport, we enjoy seeing this guy. You don't enjoy seeing the guys that are going in and taking a whole lot of trauma. But because I don't think he fits that bill, I'm still excited to see him. And on a card like 208 that could need some supporting cast and some big name guys, he fits the description.
UFC 208, we will see the crowning of a new champion between Holm and Randamie. Of course, the return of Anderson Silva, and then a must-see affair at 155 pounds. Dustin Poirier taking on New Jersey's Jim Miller.